Hey, welcome to your Apple Update. I'm your host, John Sherrod, keeping you up to date with all the latest news from Apple. And today there was a lot of Apple stuff that came out because today was Apple's quarterly earnings call where they release information about how much money Apple took in and what segments of Apple's business saw increases and which ones showed decreases and that sort of thing. And so they give the raw numbers out, and then, of course, the analysts go crazy picking it apart and trying to decide where Apple's doing well and everything. But there's also a section at the end where Tim Cook and others from Apple take questions from analysts on this kind of conference call. So if you listen to the audio of it, it's a phone call conversation basically. So and most of the time the answers that they give, especially with respect to upcoming products, are pretty vague because this is Apple we're talking about. Apple doesn't make comments about products that haven't been released or that they're not ready to talk about yet. And so, you get some dumb questions in there. I was looking through, basically what I'm going to go over is some commentary that Neil Seibert, who's an analyst, wrote down on Twitter as he was kind of going through and documenting the conversation. And one of the analysts asks, "Are you done announcing new services or what?" And Tim Cook replies, "We're always working on new things," to which Neil Seibert correctly comments, "It's just a waste of a question if you're asking something like that. You've got to try to be clever. You might be asking something about a current product in the current quarter that just happened or something that's currently newsworthy, but Apple's not going to say much about uh, upcoming products unless you can find a clever way to do it." And this next question was actually a really clever way to do it, which was, which new service do you like most, Tim, from a financial perspective? Because if you remember at their recent event, Apple announced Apple Card, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, Apple News Plus. And Tim Cook answered this way. He said, "We are going to wait and see. Lots of interest with Apple Card. Gaming is top category in App Store." And then this last sentence, last couple sentences here are the most interesting to me. "We think most users will buy multiple video bundles. We think TV Plus should be one." And this is where we're kind of getting into some criminology because we're going to try to parse Tim's words and try to see if we can come up with some things he might be trying to say here. First of all, there's been a lot of speculation about what Apple TV Plus, Apple's new premium paid TV service where they have their original shows and movies coming out later this year, what's that going to cost? I mean, that was everybody's big question, really the two big questions around Apple TV Plus, because we knew this was happening because of all these leaks from these deals that Apple had been signing with these content producers and actors and actresses. What is it going to cost me to be able to buy into Apple streaming service? And what's the value add? Like, what do I get for paying into the Apple TV Plus service versus Netflix or Disney or Amazon or Hulu or whatever? And I still think the ball's still totally out on the price thing because Apple didn't announce whether there would be a price and if so, what it would be. And I still think we haven't gotten a good sense of what the value add is because these are, again, like I've mentioned in a previous video, with the Disney stuff, it's pretty clear what the buy is. Disney has a history of making amazing content, and they've bought all sorts of other content providers from Marvel to Star Wars, now to 20th Century Fox. And so you've got this library of decades worth of great and award-winning popular content, plus new stuff that they're going to do in those brands, like Star Wars and Marvel TV shows, for example. So, that makes total sense for Disney. I think everybody's super stoked and on board for Disney Plus. The price is great. What they've announced for it is great, etc. So what has Apple got? I mean, Apple has partnered with some fantastic, again, actors, actresses, directors, producers, writers, all that. But it's all new stuff. So really the value proposition is we're Apple and we've got great sense of taste and we're partnering with these industry leading content creators. And that may be all it takes. We'll see. But they haven't said anything about pricing. And a lot of people have been speculating that, well, maybe what Apple will do is they will just make Apple TV Plus available for free to Apple TV and iPhone users as just a way of sweetening the deal for Apple's hardware purchases or something along those lines. I have always hoped that would be true because, free stuff is always great. But we're talking about Apple here, and Apple is still the company that gives you only 5 gigabytes of free storage space in your iCloud. And while their prices are reasonable, they're still charging you for those extra space, extra storage capacities in iCloud. So it's not certainly not unreasonable to assume that Apple's going to charge for Apple TV Plus. But this is the first real clue that we've gotten from anyone at Apple, in this case from Apple CEO Tim Cook, that that's exactly what they're going to do. He says, again, we think most users will buy multiple video bundles we think Apple TV Plus should be one. So that's certainly, he's linking the word buy with Apple TV Plus and saying we think this makes sense. And especially when he's answering a question about which new Apple service is he most excited about from a potential financial perspective. So not an open and shut case, because Apple hasn't said, yes, it's going to cost money and here's what it is. But this is a definite strong clue that Apple is going to be charging for it. The question the sentence right before it is interesting, and I think a lot of people are going to try to parse this different ways. He says, we think most users will buy multiple video bundles. And the question is, what does he mean by that exactly? I feel like the simplest answer is that he means that, I don't know, maybe he means that consumers are buying these services from multiple companies, because you probably have Netflix and maybe you have Amazon, and you might also have the new Disney service, and you might have HBO Go to watch Game of Thrones or something like that. So you're purchasing these bundles of content from multiple people, and it may be that that's what he means, because so far Apple has not made any kind of announcement about bundling Apple TV channels, for example, or bundling multiple Apple services together. We'd all love bundles, because bundles allow you to get more for less, because you're buying, from multiple products, or multiple channels in this case, or multiple Apple services, and paying one price that is more than you'd pay for an individual one of these things, but less than you'd pay for all of them individually. So we'd all love to see that. Like, it's a bundle that would be Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, Apple News Plus, something like that would be phenomenal. We've had no mention of that from Apple whatsoever. And we also haven't heard of any bundles. For example, a lot of people for many years have been speculating that what Apple was going to make was a quote unquote skinny bundle, which is what some of these services like Sling TV and YouTube TV have, where it's kind of like a cable bundle. Like you're picking, I want this suite of channels for this price. And a lot of people had been speculating that Apple was going to make a play like that for Apple TV. And so far that has not panned out, and it seems like they've switched courses to offering these channels for sale, where you can buy HBO, but you buy it through the Apple TV app, and that way Apple gets a cut of the revenue, HBO gets revenue, because that's how they're being introduced to new customers through Apple's app, that sort of thing. So we do know that you'll be able to buy these Apple TV channels, again, HBO, maybe Amazon, Disney. We don't know exactly what companies are going to be a part of it, although you can find some list of some that are already announced for it. But there's been no news about being able to buy a bundle of those where you could get, these free channels for this price. So if that's what he's talking about, that's interesting, because that would make people maybe more likely to add Apple TV Plus in there if they get it with these other services. Right now, still a big wait and see, but that is interesting. I've been interested in this closely as a fan of Apple and a fan of TV and a fan of Apple TV. What's Apple's play here? Now I think we can be fairly certain that Apple's going to charge something for this product, and we're just going to have to wait and see what it is. What do you think? Are you excited about Apple TV Plus? If so, why not? Leave me a comment below. What would you be willing to pay for Apple TV Plus, given what we know about it so far? Love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you get notified when I put out a new episode, and I'll see you next time on Your Apple Update.